Hey guys, it's Emily, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite books of 2020. So I'm probably the last person on the internet to upload their favorite books of 2020 list. To be honest, I have been in a semi-slump when it comes to both reading and creating videos, so I apologize for the mini break. But for some reason, on this Thursday night, I have decided that I was motivated to film something. So obviously I wanted to film my favorite books of 2020. So in 2020, I read a grand total of 142 books. And to be honest, I had a pretty good reading year. It was hard for me to actually come up with this list because I had so many books that I wanted to talk about, but I managed to narrow it down to about 13 books. Most of the books that I'm going to present in this video are books that you've heard me talk about before if you've been following my channel for a while. By the way, if you're new, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But I feel like you guys will have heard me talk about a lot of these. There's some that I have not talked about as much, but for the most part, I have documented my reading year pretty well on my channel, so most of these you will expect if you've been following me for a while. So I'm probably going to be going over a lot of them very quickly because I have talked about them countless times on my channel before. So let's dive into the list, shall we? Before I dive into the actual list, I just want to say none of these are ranked. I decided to actually present them in the order that I read them in. So the first book that I will be talking about is a book that I read, I believe it was in February, and that is Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. So if you're not familiar with the graphic novel series, it's following our two main characters, Charlie and Nick, and they are two boys who met and fell in love. And in this third installment, they go off to Paris. I believe this is why I loved it so much, because I'm a sucker for a Paris book. I have a whole Books Around the World series in which I talk about books that are set in different cities, countries, and continents, and Paris is one of those destinations that I love seeing represented in movies and books. I love Paris. I've never been, but I really want to go, and this is why I love this book so much. It was kind of light and fun, and I just really loved the Paris setting, and it might be kind of an unpopular opinion, but this is probably my favorite book in the series so far, which I've seen people say that this was their least favorite installment, but for me, the Paris setting did it. I just really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read the next installment in the series. Up next, we have a book which I know you guys will expect, and everyone's talked about it before, and I kind of lied before when I said that I didn't have ranked these books, because this one is probably my favorite book of 2020, and that book is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this is about our main character, Evelyn Hugo, who is an old Hollywood star, and she's always been kind of private about her life, but one day she hires this journalist that is not very well known and no one really knows about to write her biography, and for the first time she will be opening up about her life and about her 7 husbands. Oh my god, this book, you guys, I loved it. I read it back in March, and I have a whole vlog dedicated to it, so if you want to see my reaction and just like more in-depth thoughts about this book, I will leave the link up here and maybe in the description box down below if I can remember to. But I loved it so much. This was a masterpiece. This was everyone's favorite book of 2018. Like, if you watched BookTube in 2018, you will have seen this on every single BookTuber's favorite books of the year list, because everyone read it, and no matter what genre they typically read, whether it was romance, YA contemporaries, fantasy, sci-fi, thrillers, you name it, everyone had it on their list. And so my expectations for this were super high, but I was not let down at all. Like I said, this is a masterpiece. It kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It is so well written. The characters felt so real that I legit thought that this was about a real person, even though I knew this was fiction. I just really enjoyed it. It was so well done, so incredibly well crafted, and this is hands down the book that you should pick up in this video. Like, I will recommend a lot of things that I absolutely loved, but this one, if you haven't read, I would highly recommend it. If there's one book that you need to come out of this video with, it's this one. Like, honestly, read it. If you haven't done it, you need to, and I will probably want to reread it in the future. It was that good. Okay, so the next book that I wanted to talk about, I am kind of cheating a little bit with that one because it's actually a series, and it is the Pages & Co series by Anna James. So this is a middle grade series that follows Tilly, our main character. She lives with her grandparents who own a bookshop in London, and one day Tilly starts seeing the characters from her favorite books appear in the bookshop. This is such a fun and magical and whimsical story. I absolutely loved it. I read all 3 books in the series. I only have the first two with me right now, but I read all 3 books in the series that are out so far in readathons, and they were so amazing. They're all so cozy. The atmosphere is just amazing because it is set in a bookshop, so obviously it's super cozy. I feel like this series is an ode to book lovers because this is a series for people who love books. These are books about books, and they're just fantastic at creating this atmosphere, and the magic system in this was so incredible because I just wished that it was real. I truly enjoyed this whole series. It is so fun to read, and if I had to pick my favorite book in the series, it would probably be this one because Tilly travels to Paris, and as I've mentioned before, I am a sucker for a Paris book, but the entire series was so fun, and if you guys haven't picked it up yet, I would highly recommend it. The next book that I wanted to talk about might come off as a surprise because I feel like I haven't really talked about this book a lot on my channel, but it is Betrayed by Emily Henry. So this follows a romance writer who doesn't believe in love anymore after her father dies, and a literary fiction writer who is in a rut, and they engage in this summer-long challenge where they will be writing each other's genres. So the literary fiction writer will write a happily ever after, and the romance writer will attempt to write a literary fiction work. Oh my god, this book. I feel like everyone who reads romance will have read this book, and it will be on pretty much everyone's list this year, but it was so amazing. So the romance is this was just chef's kiss, honestly. So good. It's enemies to lovers, or maybe more like rivals to lovers, but it was incredible. So well done. But the main reason why I loved this book so much is that even though it's marketed as a rom-com, it dives into deeper topics and like darker stuff that you would not expect this book to dive into. And I feel like the author did a really great job because this book is the perfect mix between what our two main characters write. So it's kind of a rom-com, but it is also kind of literary fiction. I loved it. It took me by surprise because I was not expecting the book to get into this direction. Like, to be honest, I picked it up because I thought it was a rom-com, and it turned out to be so much more, and I loved it for that. Like, honestly, I have no words to describe how much this book just surprised me, but it made me want to read more of Emily Henry's work, and so I am really looking forward to diving more into her past work because I know she's written like a lot of genres, so I'm quite looking forward to seeing how it goes because I really loved her writing. I loved the characters. They felt so well-rounded and real, and they were super well developed. It was great. I loved it. Okay, so next we have another middle grade series that I read the first 2 books of this year and absolutely fell in love with it, and that is the Nevermoor books by Jessica Townsend. So I read book 1 and 2, and this follows our main character Morgan Crow, who is told that on her 11th birthday she's going to die because of her curse. But instead of dying, she gets actually swept away by this man called Jupiter North, and she will be entered in this competition to join the Wondrous Society. Oh, this was such an amazing reading experience. These are so whimsical and magical and fun. I just loved the magic system in this book. I love the world that this is set in. I love all of the characters. Like, yes, I love Morgan, but I love all of the side characters as well. And both of these books just took me to another dimension. They took me to a new world, and I just loved finding myself immersed into this story. I am so glad that I picked these up, and quite frankly, I cannot tell which one I like more. I really love the first one because of the whole trials aspect. I love books that have some sort of competition involved, and the first book was great for that, but the sequel dove deeper into the world and just brought this new dimension that we had not really seen in the first book. So I really loved them both for different reasons. Alright, so next is one of the first YA contemporaries that I'm mentioning in this video, and that is I Want to Be Where You Are by Christina Forrest. So this follows our main character Chloe, who is a ballet dancer, and she wants to go to this prestigious ballet school, but her mom doesn't want her to apply. When her mom goes on vacation, Chloe takes this as an opportunity to audition at the nearest location. But as she is sneaking out of her house, her next door neighbor hitches a ride and threatens to tell her mom her plan unless she lets him hitch a ride. I really enjoyed this one. I read it during a Books Around the World episode, and I loved the road trip aspect of it. It was so cute. I loved the characters. I loved the dance aspect of it as well. I thought it was really well done. As someone who has done dance in the past, I really enjoyed that aspect. I felt like it was really realistic, and you could tell that the author used to be a dancer of some sort. I just really loved it. It was such a quick read, and I feel like it's so underrated. People need to pick this up because it is so good. The next one is another one that I was lucky enough to get as an ARC, and that is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. So this follows our main character Luc, whose parents used to be famous rock stars, but they split up when he was young. Now his father is rising back to fame, and Luc gets back into the public eye. After a compromising photo threatens to end his career, Luc has to find find a nice and normal relationship, and that's where Oliver comes in. I love this book so much. It was so funny. I was not expecting it to be that funny. Like, yes, it is a rom-com, but I laughed out loud several times while reading it. I just had such an incredible time reading this book. It took me maybe like a day, maybe a little bit more than that, to read it. I really flew through it. I just had such an amazing time reading this, and I think one of the reasons why I loved it so much is because I loved Oliver and Nook as a couple. I thought both of these were so heartwarming characters, and I just love seeing their relationship grow, but also seeing them evolve as characters. To be honest, I think one of the reasons why I love this book so much is because it reminded me of one of my favorite books of all time, which was Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I've mentioned it in one of my recent videos how these two books reminded me of one another. But honestly, if you liked Red, White, and Royal Blue, I think you would really enjoy boyfriend material, and I feel like it is kind of underrated. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it, and if you're looking for a great rom-com to read this year, I would highly recommend you check out this one. Next up, I have one of the YA contemporaries that impacted me the most this year, and that is I'll Be the One by Lala Lee. So in this one, we're following our main character Sky, who wants to become a K-pop star, but she's always been told that fat girls can't do it. So she enters an international competition to find the next K-pop star. After nailing her audition, Sky gets swept away into the world of K-pop, but what she doesn't expect is the extremely fatphobic beauty standards of the K-pop world, her sudden rise to fame, and the sparks that fly between her and her fellow competitor, Enrico. So one of the reasons why I love this book so much is that I related to the main character Sky so much. As someone who also has a lot of body image issues, I related to Sky's struggles a lot. Sky is very accepting of herself, and she's very unapologetically herself. She doesn't care that she's fat. She's always been that way, and for her that's not a flaw. It's part of who she is, and she's proud of it. But seeing her struggle with the outside world and their perception of her, I really related to that aspect. And there was a point in the book where Sky was crying because of something that came up, and I was also crying. I was sobbing because I just felt the same. I loved this character with my whole heart because I could see myself in her. I felt seen in this book, to be honest. Like, I just loved the representation. It just meant the world to me. However, there's also a whole fun plot with this book that I really enjoyed. It made me discover K-pop. I loved the romance in this. I loved all of the characters, and it was such a fun story, even though it really kind of impacted me. Like, it was hard-hitting, but also very fun. This is a book that I will never stop recommending because it was just amazing. Now let's talk about some classics. So the first one that I wanted to mention is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So if you're not familiar with the story, it follows the very opinionated Elizabeth and her proud beau, Mr. Darcy, and it's basically about their romantic clash. I love this book. This was a reread for me, so I'm gonna go over it very quickly, but I loved it. It had been a while since I'd read it, and so I was really happy to be rereading it this year, and I remembered why I love this book so much because it is like the OG Aid to Love romance, and I just fell in love all over again. I thought the first half of the book was kind of very plot driven, and there was not a lot of interactions between our two main characters, but the second half of the book is what made this so amazing for me. The yearning, the romantic tension, it was just amazing. If you want to see me read this and like give you my in-depth thoughts about everything that happens in the book, I would highly recommend that you check out my Books Around the World episode, which I'll leave linked up above once again. I can totally see why everyone loves it and why it's such a beloved classic. And the second classic that I have on this list is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. So I read this during a 24-hour readathon, and I just really fell in love with it. So this follows our main character Oscar Wilde, who is a socialite of sort, and he has a very beautiful face, and he knows it. So one day there's this painter who makes this painting of him, and the painting starts aging, but Dorian Gray stays the same. So if you're going to read this, I would highly recommend that you check out the audiobook, which is narrated by none other than Ben Barnes, because for me, that made the whole experience a lot better. It really heightened my experience. I just really felt immersed in the story, and Ben Barnes was the perfect narrator for this. I loved it so much, but the main reason why I love this book so much is because of its beautiful prose. Yes, I liked the story and the characters, even though I couldn't connect with them, but the way that this is written really made me fall in love with this book, and it really makes me want to check out other Oscar Wilde books. My next book is also part of a middle grade series, and that is The Highland, Falcon Thief by Sam Sedgman and M.G. Leonard. So this follows our main character Harrison, who is forced to go on this holiday with his travel writer uncle, and they're going on the last journey of the royal train, the Highland Falcon. Harrison expects this to be a very boring journey away from video games and away from children children his own age, but things get interesting when the prince and princess board the train for the last leg of the journey, and the princess's necklace gets stolen. It's up to Harrison to find the truth and reveal the jewel thief before the end of the train ride. So I've read both books in this series and I really loved both of them. I think I gave the second one a 4.5 out of 5 stars and this one was a 5 out of 5. They were great. I have a thing about books set on trains. I've mentioned it several times this year, and so this was really up my alley. I love the setting of this. I love the setting of the sequel as well, and I'm so excited to see where things will go because this is a whole series and there's many more books coming and I'm so excited. But I also really love the way that the author duo has managed to make the plot interesting. I'm not a very big mystery thriller fan and I really enjoyed these. They were so fun, very unpredictable, especially the first one. I did not expect to see that person having stolen the jewels and I just really had a great time. It was so unexpected and I honestly wish more people would talk about it because it's such an amazing series, so underrated, and it's such a fun ride. Okay, so next is the only YA fantasy that I have on this list for whatever reason, but it is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. So this follows our main character Adriel, who is a transgender boy and he wants to be a brujo, but because he's transgender his family doesn't want to complete the ritual. So Adriel takes it upon himself to complete the ritual. What he doesn't expect though is that the ghost that he summons won't go away, or actually can. So this book is absolutely amazing. I loved it so much. I read it this fall and it was a perfect time to read it. It has such a creepy atmosphere because it's set in a cemetery and a lot of the action actually takes place there, and it's set around Halloween, and I just love the whole creepy setting and I thought it was the perfect atmospheric read for this time of year. But what I loved the most about this book is the characters. I just fell in love with Adriel and Julian. They have my heart. Like honestly, I loved it so much. Their relationship with everything. They're so cute. I will die for them. I cried several times while reading it, especially the ending. It made me bawl my eyes out. I also really like the mystery aspect of it, even though I did think it was a little bit predictable. I had guessed it at the very least, but I thought it was well executed and the ending did take me by surprise even though I had guessed part of it. It was heartbreaking, but in the best way possible. It was so good. Highly recommend it, honestly. So freaking good. And it's a debut. Can you believe that? Alright, the last book on my list is one that I was not expecting to love as much as I did, and that is The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan. So this follows our main character Nina, who is a librarian, and after losing her job she moves to Scotland, buys a van and turns it into a mobile library that she drives from neighborhood to neighborhood. Oh my god, this book, you guys. I read it in a Books Around the World episode. I feel like this is a theme and I love that Books Around the World brought me so many amazing books this year and that I discovered so many favorites because of it. But I read it during my Scotland episode and I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved the writing. It was so quirky and fun, but also talked about real stuff. Like it was not only fluff. I was expecting this book to be kind of cheesy and like fluffy, but this was so much more than that, and I feel like the book really dove into stuff that I was not expecting it to dive into. This is also another book that talks about books, and I feel like it's the perfect book for book lovers. Nina, the main character, is a librarian and so she loves reading. She's a reader at heart and you can tell, and she has this love for books that really kind of reignited my own. I've always loved reading, but it kind of made me love books even more, and this is a love letter to books. So that is it for my favorite books of 2020. Like I said, this is just a small portion of the books that I've read this year. I've read so many incredible books in 2020 and I feel very blessed because of that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to know what your favorite books of 2020 were, so leave them in the comments down below and who knows, maybe I'll get to them in 2021. But I guess that's it. Thank you guys again for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to give this a big thumbs up. That really helps out my channel. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and I guess that's it, and I will see you guys hopefully soon in a new video. Bye!